Good evening and welcome to another edition of 60 Minutes in Black America. My name is Mike Haney. We have a show today that you just can't miss. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Good evening again, and my name is Mike Haney, and welcome to another edition of 60 Minutes in Black America. And today's show, I promise you, will one that will leave you thinking, particularly if you are a Black person in this country and you wonder whether the 13th Amendment, which said that it freed Blacks and slavery was over, when you hear about the United States penal system and the need to reform that. You know, we all have been familiar with George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and numerous others that were on the kind of outskirts of the crime and justice system. But now we're going to hear about those that have actually been part of the criminal justice system, everywhere from the courtroom to the penal system, and just how they got there. But first, let's play this tape about what has happened to many, many Black people that have been a part of the penal system, and whether we can expect to get real justice in this country. Let's play that tape.
My name is Ismari Guadarrama, and I believe Melvin Ortiz is innocent.
My name is Josiah Laney, and I'm here because Rodney Derrickson was wrongfully convicted of murder.
My name is Cynthia Garcia, and I believe that Arlando Trey Jones deserves a second chance at life.
My name is Natalie Orsi, and I wholeheartedly believe that Charles Santana is innocent.
My name is Kayla Wyatt, and Raymond Allen Warren is innocent.
Is innocent.
Innocent.
Is innocent.
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 Are innocent.
Rodney Derrickson, Arlando Trey Jones, Melvin Ortiz, Charles Santana, and Raymond Allen Warren are innocent. Collectively, they have spent 122 years incarcerated for crimes we can prove they did not commit. It's time to bring them home.
It's time to bring them home, and Arlando Trey Jones III was brought home this past July after serving 37 years for a crime that he did not commit. And we're going to hear from Trey today regarding his time in jail and how he got there and what he's doing now. But let's talk about the penal system for a minute, particularly here in America. America incarcerates, although it only comprises of 5% of the world population, incarcerates over 25% of those that are in prisons around the world. And of the ones in prison in the United States, 48% of them are people of color or Black people. And if you combine that with Latinos, it's closer to a percentage of 60%. And why is that? Why is that the case, that you find more Blacks, particularly, that are part of the penal system? Let's take a look at the 13th Amendment. Let's take a look at the amendment that abolished slavery and read specifically what it says, so at least these couple of lines. The 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution provides that neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. So it says that slavery was abolished with the exception of in our prison system, or if someone was imprisoned for a crime that they were duly convicted of. And so you wonder whether that was part of a plan, a ploy to ensure and to keep what we see as a system alive of free labor for this country. And Trey will talk about that. He'll talk behind the walls in terms of the existence of labor and slavery and that sort of environment that he lived in. But when you look at what President Obama, who was the first Black president in this country, did when he first came into office, he created an executive order to end the private prison system here in the United States, where private prisons were privatized here in the United States for the purposes of allowing businesses to operate our prisons. He ended that by executive order. Donald Trump, when he came into office in 2017, reinstituted that. And that's when you begun to see a significant number of atrocities in our system come to light, meaning exonerations at a high level from projects or from organizations such as Project Innocence, as well as the organization that Trey was associated with, which was the Prisons and Justice Initiative of Georgetown University, where they begun to advocate and look at those that were wrongly convicted. Now, we know that we've heard of the Central Park Five, where 5 Blacks, and subsequently there was a 6th, served terms of 6 to 12 years for the rape of a white woman in Central Park that later was determined that they couldn't have committed. And then you go down to the state of Florida, where there was a man that served 32 years. And when they went back and looked at the evidence, there was no DNA evidence. There was no witness evidence. He was just caught up in a system that put him in jail because they felt that his lack of having a proper defense team allowed him to do so. And he was recently freed here in 2022. And then Louisiana State, and I'll tell you and caution you, Louisiana has a exoneration percentage that is about 1%. And they have one of the more atrocious prison systems in this country. So if you visit Louisiana and you run into a problem and you happen to be of Black heritage, you can rest assured that there is not much fair justice down there in Louisiana. Calvin Duncan, 19 when he went to jail in Louisiana, finally freed after 33 years this year for a wrongful conviction. And then we have Trey. Here with us to tell his story about wrongful convictions. And we can go on. You've heard of the 2 men that were convicted of killing Malcolm X, that were exonerated after serving almost 12 years as well. And so we can go on and on and on with the list of those that have been wrongly convicted that are people of color in this system. And then we refer back to the 13th Amendment as relates to slavery, and whether when you look at the population, which has been determined to be 13% in this country African American, but yet 48% of those that are incarcerated in this country are Black, that there is a tremendous disparity. And is that disparity more of an economic aspect? Because we know that this country, when we go back and look at the economic impact of slavery, we're talking over $300 billion in those days. And if you translate that into the 21st century, you're talking almost $1 trillion worth of labor that this country gained as a result of slavery. And so was the prison pipeline another aspect of slavery that our forefathers, in writing in that language that they wrote in the Constitution, important enough that this country felt that prisons as an entity that slavery was okay with was part of the economic engine necessary in order to keep America, or to keep those in power, and to keep those that were enriched as a result of it enriched. Well, we as a people have to continue to understand the dynamics of slavery, modern day slavery, and the penal system and the criminal justice system, and listen to stories such as Trey and understand how poverty feeds into that and how many of our young people are swept from the streets into the penal system or into slavery, into modern day slavery as it is defined in the 13th Amendment. But let's bring Trey in and talk with Trey and talk to Trey's remarkable story. Trey, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. And you? Thanks for asking.
Trey, it is just an honor to be in your presence, man. You and I have had a number of conversations. I've had a chance to look at your books. You've written 2 books, and we'll talk about your books in a bit. You know, you have a documentary out about you. And so I want to play a bit. I want to play a clip. This next clip, Trey, that kind of describes you when you were at the what I call the end of your prison sentence, your wrongful prison sentence. Could we play that second clip, please?
My last day on the street was May 28th, 1985. I was 16 at the time of my arrest. But 52 in the prison for the past 36 years.
36 years at that time, Trey. You were 16 in 1985 was the last time that you had felt the streets of freedom. And you came out of prison just recently, right? In July of this year?
July 29th. After 37 years, 2 months, 1 day.
37 years, 2 months, and 1 day. Trey, let's go back a bit before we talk about what's happening with you today and some of the exciting things that you're involved in today. And let's talk about what set you up to be in a situation, to be in a courtroom, to be tried for murder. What was your life like up to that point, man?
Well, I was victimized by the system, I suspect, when they killed my father in 1970. My father was shot by the police 16 times on January 16th, 1970. And I believe that devastated my family because my mother went to a deep depression and could no longer care for me. And so I was rendered an orphan at that moment. And so 16 years later, I'm thrown into the penitentiary. But in the meantime, I had to survive poverty. I've always survived, never had a chance to live. And I was thrust into a game, forced into it because it was the choice of suffering the constant humiliation of poverty, or do I hang out in the streets with the drug dealers so I can eat and have some comfort? So I participated in the game not knowing what the rules were. And in doing so, I abandoned any sense of morality that I had. And I bear responsibilities for all that I've done, all that I've experienced. But I think about how young I was. I'm 18 months old, and my daddy is dead. My mama's gone crazy because she's depressed because of it. She a 14-year-old kid of her own, and now she has to raise a child on her own because the man she loved, who married her, was murdered 16 times. We talking about 1970. This was before you had all the cameras and investigations. When my daddy was dead, they killed this black man. He had an encounter with the police, case closed. How many times he was shot, why he was shot, didn't matter. Because we were always been, man of color, not of much consequence in this country. Well, I've never felt as if I was much of consequence. And I've always operated on the fringe, not because I was morally corrupt, I believe. It was just because that was the only choice available to me.
So Trey, so when you look at it and you see these young kids out here, we're going to get to a couple of statements that you made in your documentary a bit later and talk about what's happening now. At 16 years old, you said that your daddy was murdered. Your mom,
murdered by the police.
Your dad was murdered by the police. right?
Man, he was
And
shot
so this
16 times.
shot 16 times, and your mom had you when she was 14 years old?
Pregnant at 13, had me at 14, and was widowed by the time she was 15. Pregnant at
Wow.
13, married at 14, widowed at 15, is what the Afro reported.
So when you were 14, 15 years old, and before you went to court on your murder charge, had you had interactions with the criminal justice system? Were you in school? What was your life like on the streets, or was it just a matter of you surviving, trying to eat and help feed your family?
Exactly. My life was a horror story. You know, I hung out with older adults. You know, school, all those things were irrelevant because I didn't see a future in going to school. And it wasn't until much later on that I learned that a person without hope is no different from any other animal that God created. And so I didn't see myself living beyond, 21, or didn't even care if I make it. So it was easy to just accuse me of a crime I didn't commit because I participated in making myself irrelevant. Education didn't mean anything to me. Improving upon my own conditions didn't mean anything to me. So I was rendered vulnerable in a system that is known to be cruel and diabolical to people who look like me. So by not doing anything to rid myself of the ignorance that I was burdened by, I became a participant in my own demise in many
Well,
respects.
it's interesting. One of the persons in your life, in your documentary, made this statement. He said that a victim of poverty, next thing you know, becomes a suspect. So here
Right.
you become a suspect, and that was a powerful statement, right? Because you're
Mhm.
out there in poverty, and it's easy to look at someone in poverty like yourself, and all of a sudden put a murder charge on you. What was that like, man, when you were arrested for murder of a human being? I mean, how did that happen? How did it matriculate? How did you handle that? How did you feel at 16 years old being
That's it.
locked up and accused for murder?
Well, it's not a whole lot of feelings because all you know is hurt when you're fighting that for me. All I knew was hurt anyway, so it wasn't no great big distinction. It meant it was another aspect of life that I had to just survive, right? I'm 13, I'm 14 out there, and no mother, no father. My aunt, she's a drug addict herself. I mean, with the fat hands out there. So I was never professing to be innocent. I've never been innocent in my life. I never had an opportunity to be innocent. So I was definitely wrongfully convicted because they gave me a murder that they know I didn't commit because they could do that to me.
So let
And
me get some clarity. Let me get some clarity there, because you said that you may not have been innocent from a standpoint of how you had to operate your life on the street, but as it relates to this particular murder charge, were you innocent? Did you do it?
completely, the boy, mother, the whole family, everybody in the hood know I didn't kill Cam. But when you're out there participating in that game, for whatever reason, poverty put me out there. Not having a mother, not having a father, or moral structure behind me tossed me out there. And because I was out there, not trying to make myself relevant in this capitalistic society, I was able to be tossed in a prison as if I didn't matter. You know how at the beginning of the show you mentioned the Breonna Taylors and the George Floyds, and 600 of us get killed every year unarmed in the street. But that's the easy part of the criminal justice system. For every one or two Breonna Taylor, you got 100 innocent people thrown in prison because the system is rooted in that diabolical evil in which you mentioned. Before you even talked about the 13th Amendment, that was just qualifying a belief that the actual article of the Constitution said we're less than humans. We're 3/5 of a human being. And I was made to feel like that my entire life.
You
You
had you
know,
had you had you had some folks from Georgetown help you at some point, and I played a clip because I want clarity. I've had an opportunity to look at a lot of stuff, Cherry, since you and I had a conversation, and you were introduced, etc. But I need some clarity on one thing that one of the young ladies in the documentary and the folks from Georgetown's program, from Georgetown's Prisons and Justice Initiative, no doubt, Mark Howard, were very instrumental. Mark says that he's known you since 2014. I guess have worked to free you since 2014. But I want to play a very, very short clip that a young lady in there says something, and I'm wondering what this means. Hey, could you all play number 4, clip 4 for me, please? Let's hear.
My name is Cynthia Garcia, and I believe that Arlando Trey Jones deserves a second chance at life.
Wow. So I played that because this young lady, out of the 6 that they mentioned in the clip that we played initially, said that she thinks that you deserve a second chance at life. But the other 5 said about the names associated that they were innocent, right? And did you ever notice that difference in what she said versus what the others said in their introduction of the other names associated with that project with you?
I think she captures my situation and my sentiments, that I deserve only one exception. A second chance at life. I like to have my first chance at life, and that's the only disagreement I made. And when she says that, and she don't harp on me being innocent, is because I did participate in a lot of carnage. And when I gave my allocution in court, I even admitted that I'm guilty of something that no court, no jury could ever find me guilty of, and that was indifference. When my friend got killed, and many other friends like mine got killed, I didn't even have to really care, because that's the life that we lived. And I'm horrified when I look back and see that's what I participated in. Is that what I let poverty do to me? I wish I would have had a chance to develop a more rectified, or whatever phrase you want to use. I just didn't. I mean, from the moment I came into this earth, I'm an orphan. I was never a priority to anyone. And instead of grabbing me and putting me into foster care, trying to nurture me, the system threw me right into a penitentiary. I'm born in 1968, right? During one of the most turbulent times in our nation's history. Riots everywhere. I got a 14-year-old mother, right? Married to this guy who she's loved, who loved her and cherished her enough to marry her so I wouldn't be a bastard. And then he's murdered less than 18 months after I'm born. She's rendered into some deep depression. They would call her bipolar during this time. Alcoholism took over. Then I'm left in the primary care of my aunt, her sister, who's maybe 9, 10 years older than me, and she's dealing with her own issues, her own heroin addiction. That's my innocence was robbed from me, and then they threw me right into the penitentiary for a crime that they know I didn't commit. And now you even have the detective who the Fourth Circuit even recognizes being corrupt. They gave the white guy, James Owens, his innocence plus $9 million for putting him in prison by the same police. And the only thing they do for me, well, look, you was a juvenile, so we'll just let you go. But we won't recognize that we wrongfully convicted you. We didn't give you an opportunity to grow and develop into a man. Well, I did, but it was in spite of all that they have done to me, because I was supposed to die in prison. When Dunnigan looked at me, I mean, even now, after all these years, I see that redneck face looking at me saying, Trey, you think you're going to be something out here in this world, but nigga, I'm going to show you you ain't shit. And he charged me with a murder that even the boy mother know I ain't commit. His sister know I ain't commit. And I couldn't confess to it. I couldn't actually tell who did it. I was there. I know who did it and why it happened. The whole community know. And then in court, they harped on the fact that this guy was a 7-year veteran Marine, but nobody mentioned that this 25-year-old, 7-year, 8-year Marine veteran was in the ghetto streets playing illegal narcotics games with me.
So Trey, are you telling me that the person that actually killed the person that you were charged with killing that you know? And are you actually saying to me, as I listen to you very carefully, that the person was a military person that killed this person?
No, the victim was a military guy.
The victim was a military guy, right. But the person that killed this military guy, you know who killed him, right?
I was there. It started from a conversation.
So was that a yes that you know the person that killed him?
Yeah, I knew him. I
Okay,
was right there.
so the point of it is that the not snitching mentality, which is part of the mentality of the streets and the poverty, is something that had you doing what it is that you did, going to jail because you refused to tell the truth about who it is that actually committed the murder.
I wasn't even given the opportunity to tell the truth in this kind of case.
Oh wow!
Right?
Okay,
this is a case where it's Igor Street. We talking Igor Street, East Baltimore, long before The Wire came out, right? Cam gets killed. He's a military victim. Everybody know Mississippi killed him because I'm having an argument with this dude. I'm having.
So you said Mississippi killed him. So
yeah,
is
Mississippi is dead now, so I can easily, fast forward. My co-defendant, Eric Connor, wasn't even there. Evidence came in while we were actually at trial to say it was the only reason they put Eric Hunter in prison because he was my cousin and we close. It was deliberate, mean spirit, because I was supposed to mention 2 major drug dealers in East Baltimore. If I'd have taken their name, I did that for them. I'd have been home before my 21st birthday.
And you knew that. And you knew that. And you knew that.
I mean, I was a drug dealer. I'm not a drug. I was a cornered kid being used and sandwiched by all these adults. We're talking about a witness who came to court, Brenda Branch, before my trial even started. She went to Paul Pulaski, my co-defendant lawyer. I didn't see anything. The state's attorney and the police are making me say this. During trial, she gave the same statement to Paul Pulaski. And then immediately after my trial, she goes to Larry Lee lawyer, Leslie Stein, and said, I swear I didn't see none of that. I fabricated everything. Then you got the state's attorney. Ruth Finch was immediately booted out the state's attorney's office because of her malfeasance. But I still stayed.
So what kind of legal representative did you have on your behalf that allowed these atrocities to continue, man?
Now you will be, and unless you look at the transcripts, you won't believe that this could have happened in America. I was represented by a public defender named Barry Diamond, right? Because my co-defendant was going to use Paul Pulaski as a lawyer. And because Paul Pulaski and my attorneys, Gerald Krupp, they were all in the same firm, had some split. So if I was going to continue on with Ronald Kirkland was the lawyer who ever represented me. I always walked out the courtroom, right? But because he was splitting with Paul Pulaski, I couldn't have my lawyer. I ended up with a public defender because my co-defendant went with Paul Pulaski. And his only defense was my co-defendant, because all evidence said all he did was threaten the witness afterwards. He didn't pull the trigger. He didn't do anything. But he wasn't charged with accessory. He was the only thing the jury could find him guilty of was first-degree murder. And they knew we were guilty of something because we were unapologetic drug dealers accused by that white prosecutor and that white state's attorney of killing someone. This was before O.J. Simpson, DNA, and all that kind of stuff.
Wow. Well, that's powerful, man. And, and I urge people, because we're going to talk about the books that you've written, Eagle Street, A Life on the Corner, and Behind Bars that you wrote. That was the first book that you wrote in prison, right? That talks about that. That's the second book that you wrote there. Right. But this book that you wrote, and Trey's books, and we describe Trey as an author and prison reform advocate. That's how I see him. And that is real. And, Trey, I hope that what's happening now in terms of this conversation, because it sounds like it's a release. And I really appreciate your transparency, your honesty, because there's things that I'm hearing that I did not necessarily know. And I think it's important for our people that view this, that see there's a lot of things that are still happening 36 years later to young people that look like you, Trey. So here you go through the criminal justice system, convicted, right? And then you're sent off with a life sentence, sent to prison to die in prison, correct? Is that the way it's a sentence? Yeah, as a child, 16 years old, not even old enough to drink alcohol legally, right? Not even old enough for most people to have finished high school. What happened from the conviction to the initial years in the criminal justice system to a teenager named Trey?
Well, for me, I would imagine it was providence. I always knew that I was better than my circumstance, and I wouldn't succumb to any forces that wishes to make me succumb to it, because I was better than my circumstance. So I gravitated towards education for some reason, don't know. But in educating myself, I realized that I was induced to a game, into a situation in which I didn't know the rules of, and that I was suckered into a system so diabolical that I can't even continue to worry about what they doing to me. I had to start worrying about what I'm going to do to overcome it. And so all our focus was on making me a better person so that I won't be eaten up by this evil system that ravishes all the time, right? Because we see the sensational things about the George Floyds and all that. But for every George Floyd, you probably have 1,000 people in prison for crimes they didn't commit. Because if you can kill us on the street with such impunity, how easy could it be, or easy is it for you to throw me in prison for a crime that I didn't commit when you have already labeled me a criminal, when you have already set me on the fringes of society and you tried me in obscurity? If my case was sensational enough, or if I was significant enough for Dateline or even a 60 Minutes or one of them white outlets to know the details of my story, I wouldn't have went to prison. I'm talking about the Fourth Circuit, the highest court in this region, has declared that Jerry Dunnigan was corrupt, nefarious, evil, and they awarded James Owens $9 million. But my case, they say, look, we lock you up 37 years. We know you didn't do it, so go home and shut up and here go a job.
Well, wow, that's remarkable, because you're absolutely right that the criminal justice system does not. Although recently there have been a number. I think that the Project Innocence, since it's been in existence, has freed almost 400 innocent people, mainly Black people. Many of them had been able to get money from the state for them being wrongly imprisoned. But you were sent to the state penitentiary, which has now been abolished and torn down, when you were 16 years old. You went to the state penitentiary, didn't you, at 16?
The most violent prison in the country at that time. Yeah. In 1985, the Maryland State Penitentiary was the most violent prison in the time. But Dunnigan and Lansing were so convinced that they were going to break my will and make me become an informant that they said, you're going to be, and gave me the phone number. You're going to call me. Watch. And I never did. I was ignored, and I resided in obscurity for 35 years until those students from Georgetown came out, documented my story, told my story, and I imagine to the point that it embarrassed the judicial system. They said, well, let's let him go, because he ain't just going to die, right? And I know I probably sound angry, because there is moments that I feel angry about this. I feel resentment about this. But I know that those emotions will morph into hatred, right? So I don't hold on to anger. I don't hold on to resentment and bitterness, only because I know those emotions will eat through and destroy me. But how can you endure that and not feel a degree of anger? I imagine the only way you can endure it if you're ignorant to it.
Well, Trey, and you have every right at this moment to feel how you feel, but, I always admired the wonderful smile on your face, and we're going to get to that in a second. But, I think it's important, just like that. There you go, right there, man.
Right.
That's what I'm talking about.
But I think it's learn to laugh at the things that will ordinarily make you cry.
Oh, absolutely, man. But I think it's also important for transparency purposes for people that are watching this podcast tonight to be able to go and share that pain, because we can't imagine. Hey, Trey, I can imagine I can't imagine being wrongly convicted. I can't imagine having to bury a dad that's been shot 16 times by the police. I can't imagine certain aspects of your life, man, and certain pain points that if we don't look at Trey as a power of example in his pain, then how can we ever look at the circumstances that we find ourselves in today similarly, or be sensitive to the fact that we have a multitude of people in prisons, right? Now that are innocent, could be innocent if they had proper representation and if we had a better understanding of the 13th Amendment and the correlation between slavery and free labor. You're watching 60 Minutes in Black America. My name is Mike Haney. We're talking about guilty until proven innocent with Trey Jones III, just recently free after 37 years in prison for a crime that he did not commit. Please like us on Facebook. If you're watching us on YouTube, please go up and subscribe to us on YouTube. And Trey, what I want to do at this point, man, I want to play a tape about education because we're going to begin to change the conversation to talk about some of the wonderful things that you did because you had to do, because you had to survive, and because you wanted to be a better human being. But let's play that tape on education and Trey's thoughts about what it is that he did when he was in prison.
I put a lot of work in to becoming the man that I am today. I think the biggest change in me is the education.
He didn't just sit in prison. Trey went to the law library. Trey got his education. Trey exercised his mind.
I've known Trey since 2014. He was always an extraordinary student, just with a vivacious mind, a great sense of humor, and searching for deep philosophical questions.
I've known Trey for over 30 years. He's a pretty extraordinary person. Even in the conditions of a maximum security prison, he's written 2 books that have been published. He has a kindness and consideration for others that comes through. I think he just has a tremendous amount to give, and it would really be a shame at this point for him to remain confined behind barbed wires and bars, having served, I think, over 30 years at this point.
So Trey, at what point did education become a enlightenment for you, that you focused on getting your degrees? You focused on getting a degree from Coppin. I think you got a 2-year degree first, and you went and got a 4-year degree. Or do you have a master's?
No, I got a 4-year degree. I never got a 2-year degree. I was administrating the Coppin. But I think I was on the South Wing, and I was reading a lot of stuff from Plato. I know I read his Republic, but a sentence came across to me, and it said that an educated man is to educated man is a living man to a dead man. I wish I could remember it verbatim. He said, how you make the comparison? And, Plato was so eloquent. He said, educated man is to an undereducated man what a living man is to a dead man. And I realized in order to live and elevate and get beyond my circumstances, I had to get an education. And it didn't take long to realize that getting an education didn't guarantee me anything. In fact, as I read books and developed a greater scholarship, my education increased, my knowledge increased, so did my sorrow, as the Bible said it was. Ecclesiastes 1:18, when you increase your knowledge, you increase your sorrow. So with the education came all the rebellion. I stayed on segregation a lot because I refused to be a slave. I refused to be subhuman. I refused to be broken and bowed and beaten. I was going to be beaten and took many beatings, but I wasn't going to let any of them beatings break me. And that's even to this day, because, I'm painfully aware of, well, not painfully, but gratefully aware of the fact that what's inside of me is greater than everything behind me and everything before me.
What's inside you, Trey? What's inside you, Trey? What does that mean? What's inside you, man?
A spiritual depth, an appreciation of God. And because I submit myself to my Lord and Savior Jesus and follow that example and know that as long as I love, as long as I'm willing to give and give and give, and it doesn't mean if you give me back, I'm okay. I'm going to survive this world because I'm going to give to this world more than what it gave to me. And I'm going to take a certain satisfaction in that. Maybe it's in the tradition of the Jesuits, because Saint Loyola Agnostics, he wanted to be some grand soldier, but because of his physical ailments and restrictions, he couldn't. He said he was going to compete with Saint Francis of Assisi and be the best lover of the world, give to the world great things. So I'm at the point right now, because of my experiences, suffering the crucibles of prisons, all that pain, all that loneliness. I know that most people that I come across won't understand me in ways that I can understand them. So it now is incumbent upon me to give to those more than they can give me. You know, when you understand people in ways that they can't understand, you got to give to them more, right? And that's what I'm doing. And it's painful, but I'm so grateful that God gave me a capacity, that my capacity to love is bigger than my ego. Otherwise, I will perpetuate this evil that's done to me. I don't care what they do to me. They're not going to reduce me to hating them, because I won't be no better than them. I'm better than all that has happened to me. That's why I'm still here. And I may say it with a certain arrogance, it may seem me, but I'm humbled by that knowledge.
Trey, at what point did or did you ever lose hope? What point did you become hopeful that freedom, as we see freedom on the other side of the bars, was a possibility? Or was there ever a point where you thought that freedom was a possibility?
Many times. 1988, ride in the penitentiary when the 7 police were stabbed and they were shooting shotguns and it was far and I couldn't breathe. You know, hunger strikes. I've cursed God. God, if you're real, you'll kill me right now. That I wish I had the courage to take my own life. That's how miserable I was. And that's why I'm so convinced that if you haven't had that doubt with God, you know how the catechism called in church, God is good all the time. No, he ain't. He wasn't always, and I felt that way a number of times. I wrestled with him a number of times. You know, sometimes I felt I just didn't want to live. The loneliness is so crushing. I'm a 17-year-old kid, 19-year-old kid in the South Wing. You know that penitentiary was built when Thomas Jefferson was the president of the United States? They had huge rats in there. And I would fight with them rats and had to leave a piece of bread. Yeah, I thought I was going to die and didn't even want life. I was existing. But somehow, man, that divine let me know that he whipped me all the way. Couldn't articulate it all the time, but I've always felt, man, I'm going to overcome this too after I got off my knees.
Wow.
After I prayed, after I sometimes cussed God, I ain't praying no more. You ain't real. Did all that. And it was so necessary to survive it.
Well, you know, I always admired you, and I've said I've admired you, and I really look forward to getting to know you very, very well, as Mark has gotten to know you and others in your life have gotten to know you, because that warm, enduring spirit, right? So there was something you said about love as a part of how you survived and loving. And so I play that 7th clip for me, please, about love, and Trey's thoughts about love, please.
I was just some service and example. I accept that there's a real possibility that I may not ever go home again. But I'm hopeful. I never really giving up. I always saying tomorrow as being better than what today is. I don't want my best days to already be behind me. When it's all said and done, I want my epitaph to read, I gave far more than what I got. And I'm cool with that, you know, because I think the magic to getting through this thing is about loving.
Powerful, man. And guess what? Here you are. Here you are. You know,
that's
we're
my philosophy.
we're
I embrace it. That's my
yes.
conviction.
What does that mean to you, man? And how did you express that during the course of time? At what point did you? I mean, at some point you said, you know what? Be it in 2014 when Mark and the Georgetown folks became involved and really begun to document and put out there your story, where people saw the conflicts in your case? At what point did love overwhelm these people as conveyed from Trey, even from behind the walls?
Well, I believe my lovingness would attracted them because we're vibratory creatures. You know how a kid or puppy come to you, you feel with that hatred. You just push the things away from you that you really want. We all want to be accepted. We all want to be loved and valued. But when you're filled with so much bitter and all that, you push the very thing away from that you want. And so I don't know if it was serendipity, whatever. It's a matter of grace, I call it, because I didn't earn it. I don't even know what put me into that direction, but I'm so grateful that I accepted. And when I talk about love, I'm not talking about that old romantic stuff. I'm talking about that kind of love that gives you the kind of courage that'll go into the temples and turn over tables as Jesus did. I ain't talking about the kind of love that make you give you the courage to do what's necessary, even if it's necessary to sacrifice your body and your life for the greater good. I want to convey hope. I want to convey goodness and warmth when I come in contact with you. I don't care how abysmal the circumstance is. I have to find the humor in it, because when you can laugh at the things that'll make you cry, oh man, you're doing it right. You're doing it right. And so that conviction have always stayed with me and propelled me forward. I've always been able to define my situation as opposed to letting my situation define me. And I think that's what education do for you. Like when Mark brought his class in, it was about totalitarian societies. And he presented this paper with Hannah Arendt. And in it, she talked about under oppressive Nazi German circumstance that how a Jew can be snatched off the street and his people, his family, his loved one would be afraid to ask about him because they themselves would be thrown in prison. And she used the word rendered superfluous. And I started thinking about them circumstances because, I not long ago read this book called Not in My Neighborhood, when Nazi Germany came to our city, Baltimore, to learn best practices for segregation, just as the architects of South Africa, apartheid, came here to Baltimore. And I was like, how subtle they are here in Baltimore. How you talked about Louisiana is the worst of the states, right? Well, Maryland is where they all come to learn best practices. Maryland is where they put you to sleep. One of my favorite philosophers, Nietzsche, said, the man who fails to recognize the hand that kills with leniency have lived life foolishly. If you just bring a light to just the Maryland prison system, you'll see the people there in worse dire circumstances than anywhere, but they don't even know it because they're made ignorant. They don't care about the education, and so they can keep them in obscurity. And that's why programs like yours, programs like PGI, is so dangerous to the status quo, because it enlightens. If we recognize how much money we're paying as taxpayers to maintain these prisons, because the convict leasing thing is not as important today as mass incarceration, because you get the taxpayers to pay $38,000 to leave me and then treat me like that. It's only a small, very powerful, very organized people who profit from that evil, diabolical evil, this modern criminal justice system. And the people that's thrown in it are rendered superfluous, so insignificant, so meaningless, that the vast majority of the people, the most people or good people, don't even care about it because the story isn't told. We're still under the impression that our system is so noble, so grand, and so good that it's best to let 1,000 guilty people go free than to maintain one innocent man in prison. And we're in an era time now where it's not even news anymore that someone is being released after 20, 30 years, 40 years for a crime they didn't commit, and the DNA proves it. Now we are seeing that even back as early as 1972, under the Nixon administration, the first wave on drugs, And this was reported in Atlantic because his chief of staff, what's his name, Liddy, told him Nixon hated black folks. He hated the hippies. And the way to get him was the war on drugs. I got caught up in that era. The whole United States government put their weight and chased a person like me, a 16-year-old orphan child, into a prison and maintained me there for 37 years and 2 months. And my case isn't even the worst scenario. I got a buddy named Cadillac. They put him in there. We was 16. They ain't let him go till he was 85. You heard about it in other places, but not Maryland. When we talk about June 10th, right? The slaves in Galveston, Texas didn't know they was free until 1865. I'm into June 19th, 1865. Well, if you was a slave in Maryland, you wasn't free until December. Because the 13th, the Emancipation Proclamation only freed the slaves that was in the states that were in rebellion against the Union. Maryland was never in rebellion, but it kept its slaves. You were enslaved here all the way until December. What hurts us more, what hurt me more than anything was the ignorance. I didn't even bother to get an education. Even at 13, 14, had I known that the only way I could be better than my circumstances allowed was to get an education, I wouldn't have suffered that.
Wow, man, that is powerful, Trey. You know, and
that's why our
and this
school's
is
failing.
yeah, and
That's
this
deliberate.
is really yeah, no doubt about it, man. This is a 2-hour conversation because we're going to bring you back. I know we're getting close to the hour, but you know, I want to talk about the Prisons and Justice Initiative because you came out of prison with a job, right? You have a job now where you work with Georgetown University. Is that correct?
Well, when you find a job that you love, you never have to work a day in your life.
So you don't consider it work. Is that what you're saying?
It's a job I love because it's dedicated to reforming this evil criminal justice system, shedding a light on it that hasn't been shed on in a very long time. So yeah, it's a job, but I don't have to work because I love what I'm doing. I'm very passionate about it. And the team that I'm working with are dedicated to it too.
So what do you do? What did you do specifically, Trey? You came out July after serving 37 years. How many months in a day?
2 months and 1 day.
37 years, 2 months and 1 day. You came out with a job working with the Prisons and Justice Initiative. So what does your work consist of? What are you doing as an advocate? Because I definitely got to get to your books, man. So this may extend a few minutes. I'll tell the viewers now, because you can't tell a man's story in 37 years that has been educated and is educating us today. You can't say it's 60 minutes. So if it goes 65 minutes or 70 minutes, hang in there. And if you can't, we'll see you later. But we're going to get to some specific points about what Trey has to say. But tell us about that job in terms of prison reform that you're doing today, Trey.
Well, prison and justice is multifaceted. And it's people within our organization that is better qualified to speak to it than I. But my primary role is blogger. I'm an administrative support because I'm an associate. And so I do have to go into prison from time to time and lecture. I have to enlighten folks as to
how does that feel going back in, man? Is that I mean, because I don't know.
I feel
can't say
I don't
wouldn't.
ever want to go back in, but I'm devoted to making it better. And the folks there have to understand the importance of getting an education so that they can overcome their circumstances. Because if they remain ignorant, don't get the education, this will be their life. I mean, we have incarcerated people in Patuxent in Georgetown now pursuing a 4-year degree, right? We have a scholars program in the DC jail, right? Even at our school for continuous study, a pivot program. Folks that's coming out of prison, folks that have been rendered superfluous and told they're nothing, are in a pivot program in our paralegal program so that they can get an education and be full participants in society. So I believe that our mission is primarily prison reform, but in a broader place to look at the individuals, because we come out here needing different things. But, you know, because we're so focused on informing and educating, that's the road that I'm primarily enrolled in, so that folks can learn, once you get the education, it can define your situation, define your circumstances, so it won't define you.
Wow.
And I believe our prison and justice is just so cutting edge about this prison reform. And
Are
I'm
they
excited.
paying you
That's why I
well? Are
chose
they
this.
paying you well? Are they paying you well? Are the benefits good? And I don't need the exact amount, but do you feel that you're being paid well? And I guess that's kind of relative to maybe, how you may have been paid 6 months ago or a year ago, but comparatively speaking, are you being taken care of? Because
Well, I mean,
you have
it's much more than the $1 a day I was making in prison. And I think I don't think anyone would dispute me if I say that Georgetown takes care of his family very well.
Well, that is powerful, man. That is fantastic, and I'm glad that that's the case. Now, you've written a couple of books, and you even made some comments prior to getting out. And if viewers have questions for Trey that you'd like to ask Trey, okay, put them in the chat. If you have questions specific, because many of us, and it's one thing, Trey, I got to tell you, when I looked at the Project Innocence and I looked at Georgetown's Prison and Justice Initiative, we as a people have to be more vested and involved at our returning citizens, as we call them, and people that have gone wrongfully through the system, because, thank God for Mark and the associates that work with them. Thank God for them having you as part of that team. But we need to be super involved as a people, particularly understanding the atrocities in our penal system that put a person behind bars wrongly or don't get. What does a fair trial mean? What does a jury of your peers mean, to a point that we don't ensure this? When you saw the statistics earlier in terms of how many blacks get caught up in the system, believe it or not, driving while black or walking while black or being in a situation where you just happen to be caught up. And the marks of the world, the people that look like they looked at the beginning of this podcast, that's great, but we have to supplement that with our own skin in the game and our own involvement. Trey, you said something before you came out that I want to play, related to what's happening in the streets now, and that you said if they let you out, that you can make a difference. And I want to talk about that. Could you play that last video, please?
I watch the news every day. Baltimore City, I love, and I see all the murders. If I'm blessed to be able to go out there, I know I can bring that murder rate down. I know I can stop one person every day from being killed.
Trey, that's a hell of a statement. It's a hell of a statement. Okay, you're out here now, and maybe we give you some time, and we know that we desperately need some help. So what's your solution, Trey, to what you said about being able to stop a murder a day? And maybe it's happening because things have trended down a little bit in the past few weeks here. Maybe it's the Trey effect. I'm not sure. But what was your plan when you made that statement, man?
Well, I'm going to say, well, one thing that you can do to bring that murder rate down every day, when you go see somebody, challenge a person before you go kill somebody. Say his name first, right? You have to be diabolical, cold, and cruel to be able to say a person's name before you kill him. Don't dehumanize him. If you're going to go, like, for example, if you got to go kill you, Mike, don't say, I'm going to go kill that MF, I'm going to go kill that nigga. Say, I'm going to go kill Mike. Mike, Keith, brother, so-and-so. Before you murder a person, we have to dehumanize them first. That'll prove to you that you're not a sociopath, that you're a feeling person. And I wouldn't go out and preach, and the gangs, all that is real. But most of them kill because they're allowed to be indifferent about their own circumstance. They don't see the poverty for what it is, how it dehumanizes them and make them less than what they were created to be. So you challenge that person. Okay, you want to go kill somebody? Say his name before you kill him. Guarantee you can't do it. I can't go.
So you think that there is a sensitivity issue with our young people that perhaps going to the streets? I mean, you have programs like Safe Streets and programs throughout the country in urban centers like Baltimore that use people that are returning citizens to try to touch and reach these young people in the street. Is that something that you advocate for as well? Are you talking to young people before they get behind the prison wall so you don't have to go back there and talk to them, but you're talking to them now?
Yeah,
What exactly is the benefit?
I meet people as individuals. That's why I love PGI. It's not a one size fit all, right? So I help people when simple, like I just say his name. I go to people directly and let them know no one is more accountable for your success than you are. I mean, a lot of things depend on things like, your success may depend on a lot of things, but none more than you. And any group that convince someone that we're going to do more for you than you can do for yourself, I repudiate that. More responsibility is got to be put on the individual, because America forgive you for being black, but she'll never forgive you for being poor. I'm convinced of that.
Wow, that's powerful.
Yeah, it will. I mean, America will forgive you for being black, but she'll never forgive you for being poor. And as long as we not value ourselves and accept the fact that you are cream de la crop of all of Africa's diaspora, the black man born to America is the most advanced socially, economically, educationally. And that's a significant thing, because we were supposed to have been annihilated. By all accounts, nobody has suffered the cruelties that we have suffered and still do. And the fact that you are not annihilated make you a marvel around the world. When you travel outside this country and they find out that you're a black man from America, they're amazed at you. If the brothers in the street knew of their significance, they wouldn't kill each other over $5 or $10. They would appreciate each other's significance greater. But we don't. We live in so much ignorance. And it's so important to the status quo that ignorance stays in our community, because it needs a downtrodden so that this empire can exist. I'm a practical person. I'm with Arthur Schopenhauer all the way. If you are not a socialist in your youth, you have no heart. But if you remain a socialist in your middle years, you have no brain. So having said that, is no getting beyond where your circumstance is without that education, because the poor gonna always be with us. Jesus even said that. But you don't have to be among the destitute because you're poor. Just because you're poor don't mean that you should stop striving to be better. That's what life is about, advancing, improving. And for whatever reason, I was stagnated, but then providence allowed me not to be. Wherever you at, you have to grow from that point.
God has a special purpose for you, I believe, particularly after hearing your story, and that your story has to be out. There's no doubt about that, man. You know what I'm saying? Because it's the grace of God, you said it yourself, that allows you to be in this situation a free man. And some of us aren't free, and we're on the other side of the walls because our souls and ourselves are such that we subject ourselves to a certain mindset. You know what I'm saying? And Trey, there was a question up there from a Miss Thomas talking about others that have been punished as a result of wrongful convictions. She asks, what, if any, consequences have those who were complicit in the travesty of justice faced other than the prosecutor? Are any of these people still in positions? Well, you can look to Pennsylvania, where two judges, right, are doing several decades in prison for them wrongfully convicting hundreds of young people in Pennsylvania, because they were feeding the private prison system. And so it was Michael Conan and Mark Chevarelli, two judges, in a Kids for Cash scandal. And there have been others that have been uncovered. But, if we as a people can't stay sensitive and hear the Trey story, Trey said there was no fanfare for the 37 years, 2 months, and 1 day when he got out, nor has there been any conversation regarding any compensation for wrongly convicting him. But when we as a people galvanize and understand that we have to take care of all, and that it's not guilty until proven innocent, and it's innocent until proven guilty, but part of that is us understanding a need to ensure there's a fairness in our system, that if someone has to go through it, there's an opportunity for them to be treated fair and equal as possible. Trey, we got a couple minutes left that we're going to want to talk about your 2 books. Trey's book, the latest book you have, Trey, Oh Too Fast, Smart Too Late. How did you come up with the title, Oh Too Fast, Smart Too Late, and what does that mean? Don't tell them everything, Trey, because they need to go on Amazon and buy this thing. But I want to understand how you came up with that title.
Well, Oh Too Fast, I'm robbed of my youth. If I had my youth right now with this wisdom that I got, oh man, I mean, that title just it just exemplifies what's meant when it says youth is wasted on the young. Remember that phrase, youth is wasted on the young? And that book is where I share the philosophies that help me survive the crucibles of prison. And Igastry is of a 40-year-old man describing what it was coming of age, and it takes me up to 16 years and then to the penitentiary, because it answers those questions. How do a child become a criminal, a murderer? Why? Is he more responsible, or the society that's supposed to support him more responsible? And I think those 2 books address those social issues.
So Eager Street, A Life on the Corner and Behind Bars by Arlando Trey Jones III, available on Amazon. And his latest book, Oh Too Fast, Smart Too Late. And I may tag that on my forehead, man, walk around with it, because that may be something that you may have to call me with, or call for me as well. But Trey, it's been amazing having conversation with you, man. And I so much appreciate your transparency, your honesty, and your passion, and moreover, your advocacy now, man, your advocacy, because as you said, you have always been someone. You've always been someone. That's what I kind of extracted out of a lot of what it is that you say. But now you're really someone that is making a difference in everyone's life, and being able to tell your story tonight that to people that can't relate, because everybody can't relate to 37 years, 2 months, and 1 day in a situation where they wish they had the courage, as you said, to what? Kill yourself.
Take your own life. That's how miserable circumstances was.
That's right. But here you are, the grace of God, with a continued purpose, man, and we will have you back, man. And thank you so much for being on 60 Minutes in Black America, Trey. Okay?
Thanks for having me. I appreciate this opportunity.
My name is Mike Haney, and I thank all of you for watching this amazing story with Trey, Arlando Trey Jones III, and his remarkable story. Trey was very transparent, very emotional, and very real. And we need to identify in sometimes. We need to be supportive. We need to understand versus always wanting to be understood situations that we feel that we may not always want to be a part of, but we are a part of, because we all are one people. If you're watching us on YouTube, please like or please subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you're watching us on Facebook, blackusa.news, please like that page. Next week, you've got Jasmine Pollock with Jasmine Sports, all things sports. Tell us about this crazy NFL season that we've embarked on so far. But have a great week and a great rest of the evening. Mike Haney again, 60 Minutes in Black America. Thanks for viewing.